this episode of the Jewish Cooking Connection, sponsored by our Jewish Federation of the San Gabriel and Pomona Valleys. I'm Nancy Carlton. I am a longtime supporter and volunteer with the Jewish Federation. I'm also a member of the Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center, and I'm in my 4th year as their sisterhood president. Today we are going to prepare Tuscan salmon, which I have nicknamed Shabbat salmon. I like to try new recipes all the time. I have many cookbooks, but I also like to Google, and I recently found this particular recipe on a number of websites and blogs. Sounded good. I thought it would be fabulous for a Shabbat dinner, especially using salmon and not having to worry about mixing a cream sauce with a protein. I rarely make recipes more than once, but this is so fabulous that I have now made it several times, enjoyed by one and all, and I have served it for several Shabbat dinners. It turns out to be quite lovely in appearance and delicious and very easy to make, as you'll see as we go through the steps in preparing the dish. So let me tell you what ingredients we're using today. I have a salmon fillet. This is about a little under 2.5 pounds, and we're going to actually cut it up into individual portions. And when you cut it up, you can make the portions as large or as small as you like, depending on your audience. We also are going to be using kosher salt, pepper. I like to use a seasoned pepper. I like the flavors and I like the color. We're going to be using minced garlic, fresh minced garlic. We're going to be using chopped onions, julienne sun-dried tomatoes that are sun-dried in oil. That's really important, in oil. We also have a vegetable broth. And I typically, for this amount, I would typically make my own out of a concentrate rather than buying a can. Some of you may have prepared vegetable broth in your freezer. Just take out some. It's only about a third of a cup, so you don't need to open a whole big container. I have grated Parmesan cheese, butter. We have baby spinach and parsley. So now we're going to start preparing the salmon by cutting our individual pieces, and I'm going to start the flame on the stove top because the oil needs to be really hot to sear the salmon. So we're going to continue cutting the salmon. And I'm not so sure that today we're going to use all of it. And we're going to season our salmon. And we're going to season it pretty heavily with the salt and pepper. So we've got our kosher salt that we're sprinkling on our salmon and our pepper. Now you can do both sides, but with the skin on this side, I'm not going to bother. But we will sear both sides. So now we're just going to wait for this oil to heat up a little bit. Depending on your particular taste buds and flavors that you like, you can always go heavier on the onions and heavier on the garlic. In fact, I've gone a little bit heavier on both today. The sun-dried tomatoes the recipe calls for 5 ounces. I bought a jar, an 8-ounce jar, and I'm just using them all because I don't want a little bit of julienne sun-dried tomatoes, taking room in my refrigerator. So we've been heating up our olive oil, getting ready to sear our salmon, but I want to make sure the olive oil is really nice and hot. And what I do is I have a little bit of water and I'll just sprinkle it into the oil, and it's bubbling now. So we are ready to sear our salmon. I want to make sure that all of the olive oil is We sear the salmon for about 5 minutes on each side. Some people like the salmon a little more well done. Some people like it a little rarer. I happen to like my salmon really well done. So we have now seared our salmon. It's about 5 minutes per side. You have to sort of base it on the thickness of your salmon, and we do have a couple of pieces that are fairly thick. So we're going to take that salmon out of the pan now, and we're going to put it aside while we make our sauce. If you have a warming oven, you can put the salmon in a warming oven. Otherwise, we can just keep it out because the sauce will be hot and maintain the heat of the salmon. I'm going to turn this just a little bit. We don't need such a high heat. And now we're going to add the ingredients for the sauce. So first we're going to add, we want to keep the drippings in the pan. We're going to add our butter. And I'm using fully salted butter. And I'm going to saute garlic in my butter. Just for maybe a minute or so. And to the garlic, we're going to add our onion, our chopped onion. Once the garlic gives off some fragrance, we know it's ready. Don't want to cook the garlic too long. You don't want to burn that garlic. We're going to add our onions. The onions are going to cook until they're translucent. I like using a deep pan so that things don't splatter too much. And then we're going to add our sun-dried tomatoes as soon as the onions cook up. If you like a crunchier onion, you want that texture, then that's fine. You don't have to wait till it's really, really soft. So now we're going to add our sun-dried tomatoes. You can buy them whole, or you can buy them already julienned. Either way, if you want even smaller pieces, you could cut them up further. I kind of like, and I've got a little bit of oil that I'm using just to add that flavor. I did drain the tomatoes. I like a thicker texture, so I don't julienne them any further than the product that I purchased. And we're just going to cook that up for a minute or two. And then we're going to add our vegetable broth. And as I said, I just prepared it from a concentrate and made it really, really dark. So we have a lot of that vegetable flavor. Now the really nice thing about this dish is if you're having company, you can prepare your salmon and put that in the warming oven and keep that aside. And then you can make the sauce closer to serving time. You know, many times when we prepare for a company, you've got something in the oven and you're trying to time seating your guests and serving the food so it's fresh and hot. But this is a recipe that you can be flexible with. So now we're going to add our vegetable broth. And this needs to cook for just a short while to reduce the liquid. So for this purpose, I'm going to turn up the heat just a little bit so that we make that happen quickly. The last ingredient that we're going to add for our sauce will be the cream. It's and we will need to reduce that, so that will take a little bit of time, and we'll again season with some more salt and pepper. I know this is so bad for you, but it's so delicious for you. So again, taste buds, you know, depending on what you prefer. I tend to go a little lighter on the salt just because I know a lot of people have issues with salt. My husband's always complaining I don't salt enough. Let that thicken a little bit, and after it thickens a little bit, we're going to add some Parmesan cheese to that, which will help thicken it even more. And I'm keeping some of this Parmesan cheese to the side so I can garnish with the Parmesan cheese. And you can see it's thickening up very nicely. And now we're going to add our baby spinach. Calls for about 3 cups. Again, it's up to you. You can add more or less depending on how you feel about spinach. It adds a really pretty color. And I'm just going to use this whole little container here. So now we're wilting our spinach. I love this sauce so much that sometimes I double the recipe just for the sauce. And depending on what you serve this dish with, you might want more sauce. You can serve it with or on top of bulgur, couscous, orzo, rice, any kind of pasta. That's why it helps to make more sauce. And now we're going to add our salmon back in. And hopefully it doesn't fall apart. And we are just about ready to serve our delicious dish. I'm going to turn off the heat. And for serving, so imagine if you have some beautiful couscous underneath. And then what I will do, to make it even more beautiful for my company, I will garnish with a little Parmesan and a little parsley. Shabbat Shalom for your Shabbat dinner.
כל המעשים ברוך ומבורך בפי כל נשמה גדלו וטובו מלא עולם דעת ותבונה סובבים אותו המתגאה על חיות הקודש ונדע בכבוד על המרכבה זכות ומשור לפני חיסו חסד ורחמים לפני כבודו טובים מאורות שברא אלוהינו יצרם בדעת בבינה ובחזקה כוח וגבורה נתן בהם להיות מושלים בקרב תבל מלאים זיו ומפיקים נוגה די זיוום בכל העולם שמחים בצאתם וזזים בבוא